To get some political angles and undertones now with Martin Oloo, who's a lawyer and political analyst. Peter Lingo raises a very interesting point about, the East African leaders, and particularly President Uhuru Kenyatta, got quite a bit of backlash on social media for congratulating President Museveni. In fact, he said, the people of Uganda have spoken and they have spoken clearly. And then people started to say he wasn't speaking for Kenyans.
I think that Kenyans have different views on this, and they actually didn't agree with their president on this one.
Yeah.
And you saw that in the social media. A lot of them thought that maybe what he was saying did not represent their views. And that said, and perhaps what Peter Ling also says, is let's take back the election process and also the sense of African presidency and the brotherhood. So what we've seen around, Museveni is a senior president, so to speak, if there's anything like that. And many of the upcoming leaders look up to him. So you can see Zuma, what he says, you can see what East African community says.
Also, Pierre Nkurunziza spoke, well, not surprisingly, obviously, he congratulated him. And when you talk about looking up to President Yoweri Museveni, then many are concerned, especially with what's happening in Burundi.
Yeah, but you see, what Museveni has never promised you democracy. He says that he came by the bullet. And this business of the ballot is just to sanitize his rule. Otherwise, he doesn't believe in democracy, or he doesn't believe that he should actually leave power democratically. He's thinking that anybody who should upstage him should also have demonstrated that he is capable of going to the bush.
All right, interesting, but hopefully that will not happen. But let's talk about these contradictions between the EU observers, the EAC observers. I spoke to the Deputy Secretary General of the EAC just days to the election, and he was very optimistic. Even with a lot of things that we've been hearing, radio stations being shut down for having opposition supporters. But were these people monitoring the same election? Why would their reports be so different?
Yes, they were monitoring the same election. The point is, what was their angle? Where were they each coming from? The European Union were looking at it in terms of democracies world over, established traditions of elections, and so on. The East Africans were simply saying, okay, what is a minimum here that we can say was okay? Remember, elections are not being staged so that you can see real people's will being translated. It's simply a matter of 5 years has come. How do we go about it so that we appear to be holding elections? So when you see what was happening in Uganda, surely there could have been strength in the incumbency, definitely.
Yeah.
And there's also the fact that the incumbency holds other instruments of power, including the ability to switch on and switch off the media.
Yeah.
But what you would have wanted to see is some kind of a competition. And if, going by the results, if there was actually an open competition, it looks to me that the worst that could have happened would have been a dreadlock, maybe 50-50.
Okay.
Because the lessons we see here is that basically may not be the kind of Museveni, but I think Ugandans are increasingly having confidence in him. Left free, they could easily have upstaged the status quo.
Yet, Martin, the mood is not celebratory in Uganda, as it were.
And that's
even
why.
If you take a look at what's happening in the streets of Kampala today and yesterday, since Saturday, you would expect a different mood, at least even from Museveni's supporters?
I don't think that even the president himself believes that Museveni believes that he got those votes that he got. If you look at the total number of people who voted and the total number of people who did not vote, and if you look at the vote that Besigye got, if there was an atmosphere that gave everybody a free and fair opportunity, perhaps the results would have been different. So everybody knows in Uganda why the result is what it is. Maybe it's because the air that they breathed was polluted, and many of the things that they would have wanted to do was they were not allowed to do that. So basically what we really want to say here is that Ugandans have spoken, maybe not in the way we have been told, but in the way we have not been told, because they have spoken by not coming out, they have spoken by keeping off, they have spoken by also supporting Besigye in a very strong way. So they have spoken.
All right, interesting. They have spoken. But, let's talk a little bit about Museveni and his 30-year rule. For most Ugandans, that's, the only president they have known their entire life. But some say For all you can criticize him for, President Yoweri Museveni has, reigned over a fairly stable Uganda, especially considering their tumultuous past. Things may not be perfect, but then again, many people will say nothing is, no country is, but that he's been able to hold the country together for the last 30 years.
I think that there is a place for the likes of Museveni in Africa, and that when you see him hanging on power, there is something that he's also saying about the instability in terms of our own fragile societies and so on. The problem is, don't pretend you're holding elections. Just declare yourself the way Mugabe has declared, or the way he appears to have declared. So elections are a smoke screen. But I wish you said, look, for the sake of stability in Uganda, we don't need elections. Let's just run our lives the way we are. Let's not have a constitution that talks about elections. And we go on. And there will be nothing. You see, the problem is that a lot of times, people are succumbing, or countries are succumbing to some external pressure. I wish we just, we were told, Museveni said, look, I don't intend to go away, only death will get me away, out of here. So let's not waste time trying to do elections so that my good friend Peter Alingo doesn't look for standards of elections, because they're not likely to be there. And in this case, we know, well, this guy is here for life. There is something that you can say about, say, Museveni. You can say about Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, and you can say about Kagame, that they are strong men who have helped stabilize their countries. Now, people who believe in democracy will tell you, but you see, they should subject themselves to elections and so on. But we've also seen what has happened in these countries every time people have rallied and have maybe, like, the Arab Spring and so on. It hasn't necessarily given them peace. Now, the critics will tell you, but you see, better democracy than peace that is autocratic. But the point I'm making is, he's been good for the country, for sure. But again, it's necessary that he also transitions. It's necessary that some other person comes on stage, because if he does 35 years, as he's likely to do, and he still believes there's nobody who can succeed him, because remember what our own Moi told, as I told you, that he was not ready.
Yes.
But the point is that then when and who will be ready? I think at any one given time, people must be allowed to choose somebody.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. Then what next for the Ugandan people? 35 years, and there's no term limits in Uganda. He could very well do another 5-year term after that, and he says it's up to the people to remove him if they're not happy with him, rather than instituting term limits. But, democracy in Africa, many people say this is an imposition of the West, and that perhaps we compare ourselves with democracies that are far more advanced, and that these are the, teething problems that the US had 200 years ago, for example.
It's true, and let's also admit that elections or electoral processes have their own challenges. That's why you saw when Donald Trump lost in Iowa, he said he was rigged.
The vote was stolen.
His vote was stolen. So elections have their own challenges.
Yeah.
There are circumstances that make them. Sometimes when it's so competitive, you will do anything to win. I mean, ask Diego Maradona. When it was necessary to score, he used his hand, and somehow the ref never saw. So that's the nature of elections. But that said, we must also admit, and again, I respect those of us who think that we need to see proper electoral systems. We need to see independent electoral bodies, management bodies. The reality is that we are still having a long way to go in Africa, and I don't believe that the electoral body in Uganda could have been independent. Yes, they had a final term to go, and they were bidding farewell, but they were not about to upstage the status quo. If they had done so, maybe they would not have even finished that election. So chances are that they were working under fear, they were working under intimidation, and what we see is just maybe the best that we could see in the circumstances.
All right, Martin Oloo, who's a lawyer and political analyst, stay with me, because we have lots more to talk about, especially with the events that are coming out of Kenya, with President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Supreme Court Justice who's at the center of that bribery scandal. We'll be getting more analysis from Martin, but we're taking a short break right now. On Bottomline East Africa, we'll be speaking about another leader who's been in power for the entire time his country has been independent. He turns 92. We'll be giving you all the details of that in just a short while. Stay with us.